There's been talk within the upper levels of the CCP that Li Keqiang is using this opportunity to resist Xi Jinping, which has also been the focus of attention in foreign media. For example, on May 28th, the closing day of the National People's Congress meeting, Li Keqiang was answering reporters' questions when he exposed the truth that 600 million people in the country earn only 1,000 yuan a month. At the time, the outside world saw this as a direct attack on Xi's proclamation of solving poverty and highlighted the reality of poverty in China.
Online with the idea that we need to get supply and production going in our economy, and giving money directly to people is the least stimulative. Now, I recognize that there's a need for a safety net. There are people who are hurting and are unemployed and need access to cash, and I believe that's what our unemployment system is for, which they've put up to $600 a month on top of the state benefit. So there are already safety nets in place for some of those things. This direct injection of cash, I think, is the least stimulative of all the things we could be doing to help this economy.
David, I think it's a case of never letting a crisis go to waste. This is the way that those who want a universal income plan get it through the side door during the virus crisis. I don't think it's going to happen. Do you?
So universal basic income isn't just a way to help people have the money they need to survive and have time to innovate and come up with other solutions. It's becoming an excuse for companies like Uber to not pay a living wage to their workers. So what's the idea? We'll get the government to print more money to give it to workers for them to spend with us. So what really happens? What is universal basic income? It's just a way of perpetuating our roles as consumers at the bottom of the pyramid, not as owners. If we're going to go to anything, I would say, what about universal basic assets? What about actual participation? What if the workers owned the means of production? So you don't just give them a handout so that the money ends up in the same corporate coffers and going into the same shares. That's not the point. What universal basic income does, if you look at the whole model, is allows the people who own the lion's share of our world to own more and more of it. We just print more money and more of it goes up to the top. That's not the way to get long-term equity.
The idea of a basic income is that the government provides some sort of standard payment to pretty much everybody every month, and it's enough to live on. What's the broader social and cultural effect of having this kind of program in place? What's the effect of raising people in a society where they know that as they reach adulthood, they won't actually need to start working to make ends meet if they don't want to? While a lot of the basic income debate focuses on very technical questions of how you design it and who would get it, underneath it is a much more fundamental debate about what the role of government is in society. There are a few different arguments for having a basic income. One is that it's just a better way to do the safety net that we have now. It's a very clunky system, doesn't always meet people's needs. And so one thought is that if we took all of that money and all those programs and threw them away and just had a basic income instead, it might be a better way to meet people's needs, and certainly a more efficient way. The other big argument in favor of a basic income is that you don't have to phase it out the way our welfare programs phase out. One of the biggest problems with the way that welfare tends to work is that as you start to earn your own money, your eligibility for benefits declines. If you use a basic income that's universal instead, then you say you're going to get this money if you don't work, and you're going to get this money if you do work. One of the huge challenges for a basic income is its cost. If you imagine actually sending $1,000 a month to everybody in the country, you get to a program that's $3 or even $4 trillion in size. That's just not what we spend on our safety net today, which is maybe $1 trillion, but that's everything our government spends today. So when you're talking about still needing the government to do what it does, plus adding a basic income on top of it, you start to get into the idea of nearly doubling the size of the government or needing to double all the taxes that we collect to pay for it. If you truly wanted to fund a basic income out of spending we do today, you'd have to use not just our safety net, but all of Medicare and all of Social Security as well. We already provide to each elderly citizen more support in Medicare and Social Security than we would offer through a basic income. So if we actually want to replace all of those programs with a basic income, among other things, it would mean dramatically slashing the support we provide to the elderly, dramatically slashing the support we provide to the disabled. The best argument in favor of a basic income is that the United States truly has become wealthy enough as a country that we could, in theory, send everybody enough money to meet their basic needs. And for people who see that as an attractive vision, that people don't need to worry about supporting themselves anymore, that's something to be celebrated and something to be pursued. If you had this support that you could count on whether or not you worked, you might choose to spend more time on your education, you might take a risk to start a business, you might stay home to raise your kids, and all of those things you'd still be able to do because you were still earning the basic income. The best argument against a basic income is that it represents a really fundamental redefinition of people's obligations in society and the role of government. What we define as the obligation of the individual, what he or she is expected to do, what he fulfills when he performs work and contributes productively to a community, those kinds of things are foundational to how we organize our society, how we raise children, and how we define success in life. A basic income shifts so much of that to the idea that actually providing for basic needs is no longer the individual's responsibility, it's now the government's responsibility.
This sound, a paycheck every month even if you do not have a job. It is called Universal Basic Income, and it's gaining in popularity as a concept for the not-too-distant future. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen looks at how it might be carried out.
We need new jobs, good jobs, with rising incomes.
We have to do a much better job at keeping our jobs.
Yet in last year's 3 presidential debates, the word automation never came up. And with credible projections now forecasting that our growing use of robots, self-driving vehicles, and other automated machinery will eliminate 40% of all jobs in the U.S. by 2030, futurists, labor market analysts, and leading CEOs have begun asking what will become of all those workers displaced by technology.
And now it's time for our generation to define a new social contract.
At Harvard last month, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg endorsed the concept of a universal basic income, a guaranteed wage for some or all Americans to be means-tested or limited to the losers in the emerging new economy of the digital age.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk told a forum in Dubai 12 to 15% of the human workforce will be rendered obsolete within 20 years.
This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
The idea has been tested on a small scale in Canada, Finland, and the Netherlands, with the results disputed. Some studies showed work ethic and wellness among recipients actually improved. And it was proposed here back in 1970 when Liberal advisor Daniel Patrick Moynihan persuaded Republican President Richard Nixon to unveil the Family Assistance Plan, which died in the Senate. Critics argue a guaranteed income is not only socialist, but defeatist.
The challenge, I think, for public policy is to make sure that workers are equipped to work in the new kinds of jobs that the economy is creating, to make sure that workers are supported in their aspirations to work.
All of this is a long time coming. Woody Allen's stand-up routine in the 60s included a joke about his father losing his job after 12 years at the same company to a gadget this big that could do everything his father could do, only better. The depressing thing Woody said, Bill, was that his mother ran out and bought one.
Noted. Thank you, James. James Rosen in Washington tonight.